Your every fear, all in one deadly enemy. Here's your look at the new NECA toys. This is the It, the movie, retro cloth, Pennywise the Clown. Seven friends engage in a struggle with a demon they first encountered 27 years earlier in their Maine hometown. Retrocloth Pennywise includes an alternate head, two interchangeable hands, and balloon. Well, my secret fear of clowns continues to grow, with another horror helping from the folks over at NECA Toys. Before, of course, we get a creepy close-up look of this clown, the first thing I'm going to do as a service I provide to you guys is telling you how tall this figure is, should you wish to pick up this one for yourself. According to my trusty tape measure, you're looking at the figure retro cloth version of the 90s miniseries Pennywise. That's a mouthful. Standing 8.3 inches in height. Those interested in centimeters, I myself would be part of that crowd. You're looking at the figure standing 21.1 centimeters tall. Well, I suppose it's no longer a secret, seeing as I just blabbed it to all 7 of you. Here is what retro cloth Pennywise from the 90s miniseries looks like next to his ultimate release. Now, this is the first ultimate Pennywise that we had gotten. You can see there's a big drastic change in height. The retro cloth one is a lot taller than the ultimate version release. And I have to also say there's a lot more vibrant color happening now on the retro cloth release because you get to experience it in full, in his full clothing attire, versus the ultimate release was all done, of course, in plastic. Let's have a look at the accessories that come included with the figure. We'll first start at a place that always seems to be the place where we start, and that is looking at Pennywise's balloon. In this case, it's an orange balloon, and in this case, he gets one balloon. The ultimate version, not to be comparing one to the other, but the ultimate version came with a handful of balloons. This one just happens to come with one, and it's, like I said, an orange balloon. You sort of can see the seam line in which the two halves of the balloon have been attached together, but you still have that wire frame running from the back of the balloon all the way downtown, until eventually we get to the gloved hand of Pennywise. Of course, this will fit into his hand. Very smart viewers will know it will likely be on this side because, of course, the thumbsies go in. Yes, you would be correct. It does go on this side. I'll put that in probably either now or in final look so that you guys can see what it looks like. But hold that thought. Hold that thought. I will put it in his hand. I'll probably do it right away. Speaking of hands, he does also come included with those really gruesome, gross, kind of green reptilian hands that he would have most notably in the poster artwork, where of course he's kind of just peeling, he's kind of like peeling down the corner and he's peeking his way through with those demon-like eyes. The hands, of course, are done here in a very scaly presentation. You can see the nails are much longer. There would be no fooling anybody, I suspect, that this is a real clown if he was to shake hands or blow up balloons sporting these ugly-looking digits. Nice-looking hands nonetheless, and I'll show you how those pop into place in a second as well. And last but certainly not least, Pennywise the Clown comes included with an alternate head portrait. Let me take this time right now to bring in, no, it's not magic. I didn't have the means to shrink it down. NECA Toys simply had the means to blow it up. This was the original head that came included with the previously, just a few moments ago, looked at Ultimate Pennywise. This just happens to be the smaller version of that. You can see that they're pretty much identical to one another. I would be having a tough time to really pinpoint what is the difference between the two. Perhaps, maybe, if anything, the hairs. The face seems very identical to one another, but it seems like the hairs are a little bit more textured, if you know what I mean. From this head, a scaled up, better representation of this head right here. As I said, the hairs do look like they're a little bit more creatively sculpted, let's just say that, versus the original regular release. His hair seems fuller as well, like he has more of it. And you can see there's the back of it right there. So that is the alternate head portrait. Let's get down to changing out some stuff on Pennywise. I guess maybe the first thing we'll do is we'll grab the figure. I want to show you what it looks like with the balloon in hand. After all, I did make promises. Not one certainly to get out of making promises by not doing it, but these are, I have to admit, a little more difficult to pop out of the peg from the socket, I should say. They're very stubborn, but still I push through. You pop the hand back into place, just like that, and you've got Pennywise with his balloon. The balloon does seem like it sits rather high. I thought there was maybe a means to pull the balloon a little bit further down, but it doesn't seem to be the case. As you can see right here, the balloon sticks quite far up, way up, way up, way up there. As I said, I don't think there's the means to probably bring that down a little bit. You probably could open up the hole a little bit. I'm guessing that the wire's been glued into his hand. As you can see right there, it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. Probably could have been brought down just a little bit so the balloon, if you are displaying this guy, was probably maybe dropped down by another balloon's size. Maybe just bring that down a little bit. But that's what it looks like with the balloon in hand. See? Told you I was going to do it. I'm going to go ahead and pop that out of place. As you're doing that, the first couple of times, you'll probably notice a little bit of paint kind of just puffs its way out. And that's just the paint that the excess is on, just the excess that's on the peg. We'll go ahead then and replace the hands out. And for this, you may find yourself a couple of times doing this, just rolling up the sleeve so you can find the hole again as to where the hand is supposed to go. A lot of times, as you just saw right now, if you pull away, you might find the sleeve sort of covers over the hole. And then from there, you just have to kind of find your way again to get back in place. Just attach the hand like so. There we go. And like you said, like I said, there's the kind of more green hand, reptilian hand, versus the regular clown hand. For the head changing out, I'll show you how that works right now. Grab the head, just pop it off the ball joint. Don't be alarmed by the fact that the collar goes along with it. If anything, it's actually a blessing that it does come with the head. In fact, when you are replacing the head from one to the other, there's the two head portraits right there. The collar actually fits further up on the neck so that it clears it, and then you just simply put the head on top. This actually works better than if the collar was on here and then you had to try to pop the neck through it. It's easier just to put it on the neck first and then pop it back into place. I guess before we switch those out, one other comparison, obviously bringing in the smaller version of Pennywise. This is again from the Ultimate release. And I guess the same mentioning points. I mean, the hair does seem like it's a little bit more textured, doesn't it? Sort of all is kind of going a little bit in one direction. Here, the hairs are sort of a little bit more unique to one another, if that makes any sense. Coloring is about the same. I feel, if anything, they might have added a bit of a darker wash so that the hairs seem a little bit more separated from one another. And there's the underside. Let me just get my fingers out of the way. There you go. You can see the underside right there. Kind of looks like we're looking at the back of Animal from the Muppets. And spin it around again. That's what the two heads look like. Again, they don't look that much different from one another. I could maybe make the argument, if anything, that the retrocloth version of Pennywise has more noticeable eyes, where it's a little harder to make them out on the smaller rendition of him. But again, if you want to change out the head, obviously this was the one we took out. I'm going to put in the demon scary head. That's the one that gave me nightmares, certainly growing up. And I'm just going to put the collar back on. Just going to fit that over top of the neck. And then from there, I'm just going to pop that back onto the ball joint. See how it's a lot easier when you do it with the collar already in place. And that's what it looks like with the scarier head portrait. Want to see what it looked like again? Here we go. That's what the two look like side by side. Great head portraits either way, no matter how you slice it, dice it, or butcher children along the way. That nasty clown. No matter how you slice it, though, both head portraits are really quite stupendous, quite spectacular, if you will. Anyways, we'll put that all to the side. I think what I might just do, we'll keep this hand kind of in place for the time being because it's a bit of a interesting thing differently to look at versus just simply a very pastel white clown glove. But we'll have a look at the rest of his outfit. Now, I feel there are good examples and then other examples of retrocloth figures that while it's great that we get them, they don't necessarily need to exist in the realm of retro cloth. Pennywise, I think, is a strong contender for a retro cloth figure that works extremely well when you have the natural draping and bunching of fabric. Again, I want to bring in the other Pennywise. It's almost like I had that readily available. And you can see what a stark difference the two have from one another. Obviously, yes, I get it. This one doesn't have quite the same head portrait as this one right here. I suppose if we want to match it, you know, one to the other, I'm going to pop this head off right now. There we go. And we'll replace it with the appropriate head. So again, you guys can see what it looks like side to side. I seem to remember, and yes, it's being reinstated right now, how difficult it was to get the ultimate heads on because the ball joints on these were so big. Hold on, I might just take a bit of a break. There you go. Now you can see what they look like side to side or side by side. I mean, there is really a big enough difference between the two. Yes, plastic benefits from the fact that it has sort of sculpted in wrinkles and folds, whereas the retro cloth figure, you sort of have to naturally create that. But through that, you're actually getting a more realistic looking attire. Even if you look at them side by side, the coloring is a lot more vibrant when they're able to do it with costumes, like real material, versus, again, plastic. If you look at them side to side, side by side, you can see how the striping does change quite drastically, actually. The greens and the purples on the sleeves stand out a lot more on the retro release than the original Ultimate release. Same can be said for the front. The pom-poms are a very light shade of orange, but other than that, it does look a lot more natural, and a strong contender as to why this Pennywise is a really good example of why figures work better as retro cloth sometimes than Ultimate releases. The one thing about this particular figure, though, is that the body mold, the build that they used, is still the standard retro cloth figure. It doesn't have the additional padding in the legs, for example, so you might find yourself, when you display Pennywise, just sort of doing this a lot of the time. At least I found myself doing that. When I put him on display, I like to just sort of fluff up his legs, fluff up his arms, so it actually makes him look a little fuller and less malnourished. As you can see, just a couple of times doing that, it certainly does fill out the figure a little bit more. But a lot of times, again, when you start moving things like his legs, you might just want to go in there again and fluff up the material. Of course, he does have his vest, some nice pattern work done on the vest, which, again, we want to do a comparison. I really don't want to do a comparison through the entire duration of this review, but it's simply just to show how one works better with a material than perhaps using plastic. And looking at the back of the figures, the collar most definitely works better, I feel, on the retro cloth release than on the Ultimate release. And it's not necessarily finding faults with the Ultimate version. If you're somebody that fancies picking up more the plastic, all plastic molded figures versus the retro cloth figure, by all means, the Ultimate version of the 90s Pennywise was a fantastic looking figure, but I do think some improvements definitely are showing here when you look at them side by side. For this guy's articulation, let's go ahead and look at that right now. His head rotates all the way around. I don't seem to have too much the issue where I had the issue with the other figure, where when I'm rotating the head, it seems naturally like it wants to pop off of its ball joint. Again, if it pops off, you might find yourself much more easier putting this head on than you had with the other figure. This one also does benefit from the fact it does have now a ball joint upper torso, which you can move the figure's torso back and forth. Pennywise's arms move out at about just shy of a 90-degree angle. You can bring those arms out that way. You can move them forward and back. He has a swivel on the bicep section of his arm, and he does have a single hinge on the elbow section. The hands rotate all the way around. You might not want to do that completely because, as you can see, as you rotate the hand, it sort of starts wrapping up the fabric in his sleeves. The legs split out. You can move him forward. You can move him back. He has a swivel right at the top cut of his thigh where it attaches to that ball joint. He has a single hinge on his knee. And because these are newer retro cloth figures, Pennywise that is, he does have the new ankle articulation. Let me show you how that works. The ankles move back and forth, which was a real issue that I had with the original RetroCloth figures, that they only really had hinges that allowed the feet to move up and down. It was fine and good, but it did cause problems if you wanted to have level, flat footing with these figures. That's a lot of Fs. Luckily, the good news is that the newer figures from NECA Toys do have ankle pivots. So again, you can move those feet back and forth. If you feel even though that despite all that, stability is still the issue, Pennywise also sports new peg holes on the undersides of his feet. So if you wanted to display him, sort of like I did at the beginning of this review, you can pull it off with the aid of really any display stand that's out nowadays. All have that pretty much that same sized peg. So if you have another clear NECA stand kicking around on the standby, you can most definitely bring that in and use it for Pennywise. But thank goodness, though, with the new articulation that they've managed to incorporate into the ankle sections of all these new RetroCloth figures, standing Pennywise, standing some of the other RetroCloth figures, doesn't seem to be too much of an issue at all. The RetroCloth figure line has always been a successful route for NECA Toys for giving us more obscure characters. Basically, they don't have to, from the ground up, create a brand new mold. Essentially, as I've stated in the past, all they really need to do is tool a brand new head, hands, maybe feet, and then the rest is up to the fabric. That's why we can get a more obscure character coming out in a RetroCloth form versus a regular plastic mold. That being said, every once in a while, though, there are strong contenders when you look at these RetroCloth figures, and you can definitely see why RetroCloth versions of the characters work surprisingly better than the regular plastic releases. I'm not saying necessarily something was wrong with the original Ultimate version of Tim Curry's Pennywise. Those were great looking figures, but I do think that they might have even improved upon the character by putting him in retro clothing or real clothing. Clothing drapes in a way that, as good as sculpts could be on regular plastic figures, they don't always accomplish the look of naturally draping fabric. You can pull that off a lot better here in the RetroCloth version of Pennywise. Granted, yes, as you are moving his arms and his legs, you may want to go back after the fact and fluff up those limbs, sort of filling them out. Pennywise doesn't have padding underneath him, so padding him up or pulling and stretching out that fabric when you're finished does give him then the more filled out look that the Ultimate version did pull off all on its own. But still, I do think that what they did do well with the Ultimate version of Pennywise, I think they have improved upon by putting him in real clothing. As far as I know, we are also getting ourselves the Pennywise from the 2017 It will be curious to see if I feel the same way about that figure, comparing it to its, no pun intended, to its Ultimate version. I'm wondering if I actually might end up liking the RetroCloth version more than the all-plastic release. There's definitely some strong contenders, strong arguments certainly to be made as to why RetroCloth was probably the best thing that could have happened to Pennywise. I think you get a better looking figure in all honesty versus the one, and I loved the other ones, but versus the other Ultimate figures, which up to now we've gotten 2 of them. And that's certainly a question also to be asked, whether we will be getting another Pennywise. Is this a one and we're done sort of scenario? I mean, the Ultimate Pennywise had 4 alternate heads, and then he did get a secondary release with even more accessories and more heads still. Ultimate figures, I don't think we've ever gotten ourselves a second helping, a double dipping, if you will. Maybe this is a one and we're done sort of scenario. We had never got a neutral faced expression with this particular Pennywise, and maybe we don't really need one. What do you guys think of the new RetroCloth It's from the 1990 miniseries? Personally speaking, I like this one, I think, a little bit more than the Ultimate all-plastic release. Always like reading your comments down below. If you have managed to pick up this one also for yourself, let me know what you guys think of it. And if you are new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button that's located just below the video. You probably can see it right now. If it doesn't say subscribed and you're liking this content, feel free to hit that subscribe button down below. Feel free to hit that bell notification. And feel free, though it may be a little uncomfortable, feel free to keep your peepers peeled because there's going to be a whole lot of videos coming your way. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.